Okay, I'm just gonna punch in a little disclaimer at the beginning here. They are doing a big construction project out behind my apartment here, and it's kind of quiet right now, but they're literally working on it all week long from like sun up to sundown. So you might hear a little bit of background noise and occasional like beep beep from a truck, but just bear with me because, you know, it's semi-quiet right now. So trying to squeeze this in when I can. So anyways, today I have a fun video. I do so many like specific trope recommendation videos where I give like, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8 recommendations for one specific trope. But I was like, you know what, let me go through and pick my favorite tropes and give you 2 recs each for some of my favorite tropes. That way you get like a big mix in a video here. So when I started making my favorite trope list, I actually have a ton. So I am going to make this either 2 parts or potentially even 3 parts at this point. So I picked 6 tropes just that I felt like talking about today, books that I was like, yeah, you know, let's talk about those. So I have 6 of my favorite tropes. So you're gonna get 12 recommendations total, 2 each. We'll do more of these as we move forward. If you guys like them, if you hate it, then like I'm not gonna waste my time or waste yours. But if you guys like it, then we'll keep going with it. So anyways, that's it. Let's go ahead and jump in. So these are in no particular order. It's just like how I like have them written down. So first up, we're going to talk about some forbidden books because obviously y'all know I love forbidden romances here. Like forbidden, taboo, those are like my 2, and dark romances. I'd say like those are like the 3 that I feel like most people kind of like know me for. So let's go ahead and start out with forbidden. So I classify forbidden as something that it's like there is like a rule against it, that it's like they are not supposed to be together. It's not just like, ooh, that's like looked down upon. No, it's like they legitimately like they can have repercussions for being together. So first up, I'm going to start with Tempt Me by K.A. Tucker. So this one is a boss employee romance, so that is why I'm including it under the forbidden category. This one follows Abby and Henry. So Abby is a college student. She's getting ready to graduate, and she has been raised in this very religious town. She's been dating the pastor's daughter, pastor's son, been saving herself for marriage, like all this stuff. She's been like the goody two-shoes that her family has raised her to be. However, her fiance ends up cheating on her when they are in school, and she's like, you know what, screw this. I'm not going home. Like all these people want her to forgive him because, you know, like people make mistakes, whatever. And she's like, screw you all trying to talk me into this. He's like, I'm gonna go make some decisions for myself finally, because clearly your decisions suck. So she ends up going and getting a job in Alaska at the Wolf Hotel. When she arrives there, she's meant to be on the landscaping crew, but there's a bit of a mix-up with her job title, and she ends up becoming the assistant to Henry Wolf, the CEO and owner of the Wolf Hotel. And, you know, they end up falling in love, and yeah, I'll let you read the rest. It's a 4-book series, super, super, super bingeable, perfect for summer. I binged them last summer. As we're heading into the warm months here, you want something like quick and easy to fly through. This is where it's at. It's hot, it's fun, it's steamy, it's enjoyable. Like there's drama. He's rich, so they're like flying on private planes. They're doing the fun stuff. So anyways, absolutely love this one and love this entire series. And then the other one that I have in this forbidden romance category here is Bittersweet Surrender by Q.B. Tyler. So this is the first book in the Bittersweet duet. They both follow the same couple, so you're gonna want to read them back to back, but you start with Bittersweet Surrender. So this one follows Charlie, and Charlie is currently in marriage counseling with her husband. They've been together for like 7 or 8 years or something. They've been married for quite a few, but they've been fighting for the last couple, and they just like they're trying to make it work, but at the same time Charlie's kind of checked out. You kind of see like problems that have arisen that have driven her to this point. And at the point that we start this book, she is having an affair with her marriage counselor that she is currently seeing with her husband. Is there romance? So this one I put in here because obviously you like are not supposed to date patients, so like that's there. And then also the fact that she's married, so there is cheating in this. If cheating bothers you, then you're not gonna like this one. Personally, I'm not bothered by it, especially when they're cheating to be with each other. And you know, you're gonna like see the husband and kind of be like, you know what, Charlie, I agree with you. So anyways, that is this one. Absolutely love it. It's one of QB's first books, and honestly, it's still like in my top 5 of her books that I've read all of them, but I think this would probably be in my top 5. I absolutely love this duet. It's amazing. The sneaking around is so good, and the repercussions are real with this one. So just buckle in for a wild ride, and it's so good. Next up, let's jump into brothers' best friend romances here. So I have The Truth About Heartbreak by B. Celeste. So this one follows River and Everett. So River, when she is how old? Like 12, maybe 12 or 13. She is in foster care and she ends up being adopted by this couple who has a son already who's a couple years older, Ollie, and she joins their family. And when she joins their family, she ends up meeting Everett, who is Ollie's best friend. And obviously at the beginning, it does not start out romantic because they're literally like children, like teenagers. But then as they grow up, she kind of gets a crush on him, and Everett definitely has his own struggles going on. But then when they are full-blown adults, he also has an attraction to River. However, there are just some things that are always standing in the way of these two being together. So that leads to it being pretty angsty, pretty emotional. There's a lot going on. They both have like a sadness inside of themselves that they like recognize in each other. So that really like draws them into each other. But also they do have quite a few obstacles standing in their way. Ollie being one of them, of him like not wanting Everett anywhere near his sister, but some other obstacles as well that come up that I don't really want to spoil, but that definitely, there are just a lot of things standing in the way of these two being happy and in love. So definitely leads to a fun but angsty time. So absolutely love this one. And then another brother's best friend one that I love is Burnout by Coralie June. So this one follows Decker and Blakely. So Blakely, she is what? Is she 18? I think she's 17, like about to turn 18. However, there's some issues with her home situation and her mother, I think, dies, and I don't think the dad is in the picture. And she really has nowhere to go. So she ends up calling her older brother, who she doesn't really have much contact with, but she's like, hey, I kind of like need somewhere to go. Like I need someone to live with, and you're kind of like the only family I have left. And he's like, sure, like come move in with me. He's very happy to get reconnected with Blakely. So she goes and she moves into his apartment with him. And when she arrives there, she ends up meeting his best friend and roommate, Decker. And he is what, in his early 20s. He's like around the same age as her brother. And he immediately is pretty skeptical of Blakely because her older brother has a lot of money. He's very successful and he's doing well for himself. And also the fact that Blakely has like never been around him before. And the fact that now she doesn't really have anywhere else to go. He's just kind of like wondering, like, is she here for the real thing? You know, her brother and his best friend has struggled with his I can't remember his name, but he's struggled with his family and with his parents' relationship. So Decker is just like kind of wary of Blakely coming into the mix here. So it does create like a little bit of like a dislike to love kind of element. And then you also have the forced proximity in there of them being roommates. And on top of it all, he ends up being her teacher. But I'm putting it in the brother's best friend category because I say that that kind of plays into the mix a little bit more with this one specifically than like some of the other ones, especially with them being roommates. And her brother quickly becomes very protective over Blakely. So that's going to cause some issues, you know, if Decker tries to slide his way in with her. So yeah, that is this one. There's just a lot going on in it, but it's a really fun time. And I'd say the brother element plays into it pretty heavily, like similarly in The Truth About Heartbreak. And speaking of student teacher, should we just get into it? What would be me making this video if I didn't include my favorite trope of all time, which is student teacher? So I tried to pick two that I feel like I haven't talked about fairly recently. I tried to pick recs that I feel like I don't talk about a ton, but some of them, I mean, like they're just my favorites and I have to include them anyways. But with student teacher specifically, because I read so many student teacher books, so I picked two that I feel like I haven't talked about recently on my channel here, but two that I absolutely love and adore. So the first one up is Crash Course by Alyssa Wilde. So this one, oh my gosh, what are they? Arden and Henry. One night after Arden, I believe she gets in a fight with her mom or something, and she like goes to a gas station, has like an encounter with this man, and then she ends up being hit by a drunk driver when she's back on the road, and there's a man who comes and saves her from this accident, and that turns out to be Henry. And Henry is the one who pulls her out, and they like briefly connect afterwards, but then he just suddenly like disappears. And Arden has a long road to recovery, so she ends up a year behind all of her peers graduating high school. So she's now like 18 or 19, but she's a senior in high school and she needs to finish all of her credits to graduate. And when she shows up at school, guess who ends up being her teacher? Henry, the guy who pulled her out from the accident and then ghosted her afterwards, and he's now her new creative writing teacher. And Arden just has a lot to be working through. She's still recovering from the accident, but also she's just like sad. She's just sad, and she doesn't really have anyone at home to rely on. She doesn't really have a lot of friends. She just very much feels like she's on an island by herself. And Henry sees that and really wants to help her work through her issues with her writing in his class, and then also in a romance. And it ends up being their story. There are more twists and turns in this one that I don't want to spoil or anything, so I'm gonna leave it at that. I absolutely love this one. So good and very like emotional, which I just love. So there's that one, and obviously with it being student teacher, always gonna have some issues that you run into when there's that. And then we also have Voyeur by Fiona Cole. So this is the first book in the Voyeur series. However, they're all standalone, so you get Oakland. So you get Oakland and Callum's full story in this book here. Also, there's a post-it in it because I'm taking it to Book Bonanza for Fiona Cole to sign because I love it that much. Oakland, her parents have spent all of her college money that they saved for her, and she needs to be paying for her tuition. So she's like, what am I gonna do? So her roommate is like, hey, you know, my uncle owns this club called Voyeur, and it's this spicy club where people can go and watch people act out scenes for them that they like are interested in seeing. And she's like, I could talk to my uncle and get you a job there. And Oakland at first is really resistant to it, but then she kind of ends up having no other choice, so she ends up going and working at Voyeur, and that is where Callum first sees Oakland, and he is immediately kind of drawn into her. He's a resident, or not a resident, he's a member of Voyeur, and he goes there fairly often for reasons that you find out, or not like fairly often and like being like, that's kind of weird, he's here like every single night, but you know, it's a safe place for him to be, and you find out why he likes going there. And when he shows up to school on the first day, who is his new student? The woman that he's been enjoying watching at Voyeur. And Oakland ends up becoming his TA for the semester, and it is their romance. So good. Pretty emotional. I wouldn't say this is dark, but there's definitely some triggering things in here. So definitely, if you're having triggers, make sure to look them up, especially when it comes to Callum's character. But I absolutely love this one between the two of them. I love their connection that they build. It's such a fun setting. And obviously with them being student teacher and her being his TA, there's so much like forced proximity at school when they like can't be together. So good. Next up, let's talk about rock star romances, because I love rock star romances. Even though I'm not really reading a lot right now for different reasons, I still love them, so I want to talk about them. So first up, first up, let's talk about Groupie, because it's just so fun. So Groupie by C.M. Stunich. So this one is a rock star reverse harem romance. So this one follows Lilith. If there is ever a character down on her luck, it is Lilith. So her father ends up passing away, or her father or her mother ends up passing away, and I think it's her dad, and her stepmom is like horrible, and she needs to get like across the country in order to pick up some of her stuff from her dad's house that her stepmom is like very quickly clearing out. So she's trying to sell these concert tickets that her and her boyfriend were going to go to, that her boyfriend has now broken up with her. She has like no place to live, and I'm pretty sure she just lost her job as well. Like literally everything that could go wrong in her life is going wrong. But however, she ends up being in the parking lot where her car breaks down at this concert, and she walks past this random person in the parking lot, and they're like, congratulations, you found me, and drops her a backstage pass. And she's like, what? But also she's like, you know what? I can't even get on the road. My car is broken down. I literally don't know what else to do. So yeah, sure, I'll go in and watch this concert. And when she's in there in the VIP area, she ends up meeting some of the members of the band, and they end up, hitting it off, take her back to the tour bus, have a fun night with her, and she ends up going on tour with them, all 5 of them, and she ends up getting with all 5 of them. And it's the first book in a trilogy. They are super bingeable. Once again, so dramatic. Just suspend your disbelief a little bit, okay? But I'm telling you, this book is so fun, and it takes place like all on tour, which is exciting. And all 5 of these members of this band are sad boys. They're all hurting. They're all like damaged, in some way. Personally, my 2 favorite, I think that their names were Paxton and Ransom. Ransom was like the saddest one, and Paxton was the meanest one, and they were my 2 favorites. It's such a fun series. I just absolutely adore it. That's Groupie. And then my other favorite rockstar romance, I did just recently talk about this book, and I don't remember what I just talked about it. Was it Toxic Romance, I think? But I'm going to include it again because The Words by Ashley Jade is like my favorite rockstar romance ever. So this one follows Lennon and Phoenix, and This is so not only is it rock star, but then it's also a childhood friends to enemies to lovers, second chance, forced proximity romance, all that good stuff. So Lennon and Phoenix first meet when they are back in high school, and Phoenix really struggles with learning, and he is about to not graduate if he can't pass this class. So the teacher enlists Lennon, who is a very smart student, to help tutor him, and she does. And as they do, they kind of form a bit of a friendship. Lennon is very much an outcast. She doesn't really have a lot of friends, and Phoenix, shows her kindness and starts like hitting it off. They end up, having a bit of a relationship, but then there is a betrayal. I'm not going to get into it. You can read it and find it out for yourself. But things happen years later now. They end up reunited because Phoenix is on the road. He's a successful musician. However, he is spiraling, and everyone around him is like, we need to do something about this, because he's just never going to stop until something like really, really bad happens. And Lennon is working at a bar, and she ends up needing some money. So when Phoenix keeps sleeping with all of his sober companions, they're like, who can we hire that won't be seduced by him? And his bandmates are like, oh, you can track down Lennon. And they do, and she ends up agreeing and coming on tour and being his sober companion on there. And that's this book. There's so much more to it. It's such a thick boy, but I promise you, each and every part of this book is worth the journey. There's never a dull moment between these two, and it's so toxic and messy. And also them being on the road and like the rock star lifestyle is just so fun in here, but also just like adds to that spiral of Phoenix's life. Absolutely love it. If you haven't read it yet, you got to. But also definitely we'll look up triggers for this one, because again, there's a lot in this. What do we have next? Okay, we got dark romances. So here's the thing. Dark romances, it's such like a big category because there's so much that can go into dark romances. Like I've done a guide to dark romance where I did like level 1 to level 5. I have like dark romance recommendation videos. I talk about dark romances a lot. So I picked 2 that are just 2 of my favorites. I will say they are on the darker end of the scale, but they're not like the darkest I've ever read. So they're not going to be like completely like, oh my God, McKay, what are you throwing us into? But definitely, as always with any book or any romances, dark romances, check your triggers. So first up that I'm going to talk about is Still Beating by Jennifer Hartman. So this one follows Cora and Dean. So Cora and Dean, they are enemies. They don't like each other. And Dean has been dating Cora's sister for a long time. And when they are out celebrating, I think it's like Cora's birthday or maybe like her sister-in-law's birthday or something, they're out at this bar celebrating, and everyone else decides to leave, but Cora decides to stick around for a little bit longer. And when she can't get a ride home later that evening, she ends up having to call Dean, and he's like the only one who answers and agrees to come and pick her up. And when they are on their way home from the bar, they are run off of the road and taken hostage by a serial killer who kidnaps people and makes them fall in love and then kills them. And it is their story in captivity and then beyond, and it is very messed up. First of all, because Cora and Dean have always hated each other, but then they end up being the only people that they have to cling to, and how that works. And like the serial killer's literal thing is like to make people fall in love and then kill them and like have that pain. And then also them knowing that Dean is engaged to Cora's sister in the outside world, and like they should not be falling in love, but they truly are the only people who can understand their experience. And it goes to some deep, dark places, but it's amazing. It's amazing. It's emotionally draining, but it's such an amazing romance, and I absolutely love it. So I had to include that one. And then my other one is a recent favorite dark romance of mine that I love it so much, and that is Vibe by Liza James. So this one follows Ruby and Aura. So it's like a cult romance in there as well a little bit. So when Aura was growing up, she was born and raised into a cult, but she has escaped, and now she's out in the real world, and she's just trying to live her life. She's a photographer, she has a boyfriend, she has some friends, and even though she is out of the cult, she still has a lot of fear around it, fear of them like dragging her back in, of them finding her, and like just of people in general. So she has a pretty small bubble, and those people she really does cling to, but also because of her like vulnerability, that also leaves her open to people maybe like taking advantage of her a little bit. And that is where Ruby comes into play, because when Aura is out with her boyfriend and friends one night at a club, they end up seeing Ruby, and Ruby is a dancer at this one club, and she has her own reasons for what she's doing, and she has her own backstory and struggles that I'm not really going to go into because I don't want to get into spoiler territory, but you find out, why she's at this club dancing, and that this isn't the life that she wants. but it's the life that she's in right now. And she ends up seeing Aura, and they end up just having this like electric kind of connection between the two of them that they can't explain. Although Aura is dating her boyfriend, so she's kind of like off limits because of that. But Ruby sees her boyfriend and her friends, and she's kind of like, I don't really know if these are like the best people to be around you. Like, they're not really like uplifting you. You're almost just with them because that's all you know outside of the life that you fled. And it ends up being their romance and how they kind of like help pull each other out of their darkness from each of their pasts. But then, you know, the cult definitely comes back into play, and I don't want to get any more into spoilery territory, but when I tell you that these two are just soulmates and their connection, I had not read, so this I read last year at the end of the year, and it had just been a while since I had read a book where I genuinely like felt the connection. You know, obviously you read the connection on the page between characters, but I felt the connection between these two, and I just absolutely love and adore this book. But it definitely is dark, it definitely goes places. Check your triggers on this one as well, but it is just so amazing and I love it. And like the dark sapphic vibe is just like, oh, it's perfect in this book. Absolutely love it. And lastly, hockey romances. I was gonna broaden it to like sports, but I actually think I might do like sports. There's just so many sports. So I think I'm actually gonna break it down because hockey specifically is my favorite sports romance to read. So I picked two of my favorite hockey romances that I've read. And the first up is The Risk by Elle Kennedy. So this is the second book in the Briar U series. Briar U. However, you don't have to read book one in order to read book two. Like, they're all standalones. You get Jake and Brenna's complete story in this book. But I do love, it's like kind of a spin-off of the Off-Campus series, which is super popular, but I feel like not as many people read Briar U. So I wanted to pull this one back around because The Risk is truly the gem of the Briar U series, in my personal opinion. So this one follows Jake and Brenna, and it's also enemies to lovers. So Brenna is just a bad bitch, okay? She's just a bad bitch. I don't know how else to describe her. And she is the coach's daughter of the Briar U hockey team. So when she ends up fake dating the star of their rival hockey team, I think, is it Harvard? Is that where Jake plays? Yeah, Harvard's star forward. That obviously is a no-no because they're school rivals. And Brenna, however, though she's really into sports and she wants to break into the industry and doing, I think, does she like sports broadcasting or something? That's where she like wants to be. However, people like, it's just hard to get her like foot in the door and for people to take her seriously. And in order to score this internship, she ends up fake dating Jake. And what is Jake getting out of this arrangement, you may ask? Well, Jake is this very arrogant, cocky hockey player who he just, he sees Brenna and he's obviously attracted to her. And he's like, fine, you know what? I'll agree to be your fake boyfriend and help you get this internship, but I want a real date for every single one in return. Because Brenna is a little bit of an ice queen and he really wants to break down her barriers and kind of get to know the real Brenna behind the facade that she puts out, like the tough girl facade that she puts out for everyone. He wants to get to know the real her. So for every fake date they do, he wants a real one, and it is their romance. It's just so good. I love Brenna. Like, I really think that she maybe my favorite heroine across all of the Off-Campus Briar U books. I think she might be. And I love Jake too, and the fake dating just never fails. And also with them being rivals, it's so good. I just absolutely love this book. And you get a lot of hockey because obviously Brenna's also into hockey on top of Jake playing hockey. And last hockey one is a newer one that I read, and that is Offside by Avery Keelan. So this one what are their names? Bailey and Chase. Okay, so Bailey is dating the star hockey player of her school, but on her 21st birthday, he ends up dumping her, and she needs to get back out there a little bit. And when she's out at a bar one night, she ends up hitting it off with Chase. Not really hitting off, actually, kind of. They end up seeing each other, and he does not really realize who she is, even though she is fully aware who Chase is. And Chase is a player, the star player of the rival, I guess I'm all about hockey rivals today too, of the rival school's hockey team. So it would be really off limits for her to date him because, like I said, they're rivals, but also her brother plays on the hockey team that she's at. So when everyone kind of takes his side in the breakup, she's kind of like, you know what, screw you all. Like, you have no loyalty to me. I have no loyalty to you. I'm going to go and start dating Chase. Well, not dating right away, but they end up striking up this friendship, and then they do end up dating and falling in love, and that obviously causes some problems. But the ex-boyfriend just is absolute garbage in here. So, I mean, like, you don't really feel bad that she's like betraying her friends and school and like brother and all that for dating someone on the rival team, because he's absolute garbage, and you know what, her friends are too. So anyways, you get into that, and it is their friends to lovers kind of romance, but they're still rivals. And yeah, I absolutely love this one. And yeah, I feel like I did a really poor job at explaining this book, but I think, you know, my brain's just starting to fry a little bit, which shouldn't happen because I'm only talking about 12 books, but also it is. So anyways, I love that one. And yeah, just read it if you like hockey romances. So anyways, that is it for today's video on Friday. I don't know, guys. I'm kind of behind on my schedule here, but something will be up on Friday for you guys. So anyways, that is it for today's video, and I will see you when I see you.